There are a few more people still coming in, but want to go ahead and welcome everyone here to our Women in Tech webinar about how to build a gender diverse workforce, partnering with reacHIRE and Fidelity and Rocket Software. Really happy to have everyone this morning. We do have several non-members on the call, so a quick little intro to me and to NC Tech. I'm Andrea Fleming. I'm our Director of Workforce Development and Talent at NC Tech. Been on board for about 3 months, so still learning the ropes a little bit, but really happy to join such a great organization. NC Tech has about 600 members across North Carolina, both what you would typically think of as a tech company, but we also have a significant number of what we term as our tech-enabled companies. So a lot of companies with headquarters that have significant IT and tech departments, like Krispy Kreme. You know, we all want to make sure that we can get a hot and now donut. Krispy Kreme, Hanes Brands, several of the banks are also members of NC Tech. So my position is actually new. Talent and workforce is a challenge, I think, for almost any company in the US right now, definitely for tech companies. A big part of what we're looking at is looking at some different avenues and strategies on how to broaden that scope for workforce to better retain and engage and grow diverse workforce. Women in tech is definitely a big opportunity for that. You know, how can we do better at engaging the women that are currently on board in companies? How do we retain them, and how do we help to grow those gender diversity networks in tech? Very happy to have reacHIRE as a member. We're just talking, they've been a member of NC Tech for about 5.5 years, and are really happy to have them as a resource that we can share with other members and non-members to help grow and build a gender diverse workforce. And with that, I'm going to turn it, one more housekeeping thing. We will take questions at the end. Feel free to enter them in the Q&A box. That's a little bit easier to manage than the chat. Please go, you can put your question in at any time. They will address them towards the end of the session. If you would like to introduce yourself, your role, or just chat with other attendees, please use the chat box for that. Now, the housekeeping is done. I will turn it over to Addie Schwartz with reacHIRE. Thank you, Addie.
Thanks so much, Andrea. So excited to be here today. Yes, we really are proud of our partnership with NC Tech, and so excited to be sharing this conversation today with Sharon Owen Schwartz, who is from Rocket Software, and Deandra Brown, who is from Fidelity. I'd like to start out with this topic of that Fast Company wrote an interesting article about, employees who quit have realized this one missing thing about their job. And the one missing thing is a sense of belonging. How do you create a sense of belonging and connectivity? All made more important with this very tight labor market that we have now, where individuals can hop from one company to another. So how do you actually really engage, attract or integrate talent, engage them, and then keep them? And I think that's really the crux of the conversation today. According to a recent McKinsey study, one of the top reasons people are resigning has nothing to do with compensation or work-life balance or mental health. It really is all about this sense of belonging. So how do we crack that? What is that all about? And then, we know that it's tough for everyone to feel that sense, as we have been living in this pandemic where people are hybrid, working from home, amidst many other distractions and things that they're responsible for. So with that, as I said, Deandra Brown, Director of Career Programs at Fidelity Investments. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Sharon Owen Schwartz, not related to me, similar last name, spelled differently, who's Vice President of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, ID&E for Rocket Software. So the RIDE. So she'll tell you all about RIDE, the way they think about it. DEI is a hot topic. And the question of the day is, what are companies doing to concretely drive change? How are their values and priorities showing up to their employees, their partners, and the general public? So I know you guys both in your organizations, which are different in size, different in industry, are thinking very strategically about this and thinking of different ways to actually engage your employees, to attract the best talent, and to then help them feel that they belong so that they stay. So this morning, what we're going to do is get a bird's eye view into what they're actually doing, how it's working, and how it's really impacting their employee culture and their communities. So, the broken rung is still there. There are not enough women that are moving up the rung, even though more women are graduating with undergrad degrees and advanced degrees. We're still not seeing the movement and equal representation. And clearly we know that's true of women of color, even worse. Given that, how can companies build organizations that at various levels of the pipeline have more equal representation and represent more of what society looks like? And once you've added the diverse talent, what do you do with it? So there's been a lot of effort, and we see with a lot of our partners, a lot of effort to bring, diverse talent into an organization. But is that enough? And are they staying? And how do we encourage and create environments in order to stay? All right. So with that, here we go. Shara, I'm going to start with you. And I hope this is a great conversation. As we said earlier, I already see some things in the chat. I'm so excited about that. We will get to those towards the end, and we'll leave plenty of time for those questions and answers. So Shara, since the pandemic began, what are some challenges that your employees have faced given this new paradigm?
So yes, Addie, what we all know and what we've all been living through for the past 2 years is everything, including companies and employees have been turned on our heads, right? And so you spoke of something really important earlier around belonging and how that is critical, and how the challenge of belonging in this different moving environment has definitely been a challenge for employees and also for companies. And we know that that sense of belonging is really a critical part, because we know that people have been leaving their jobs for more pay, and that is not what is getting them to stay. They want that belonging. They want to have purpose also in their jobs, right? They want to be able to advance. And a part of that belonging too is about the culture, and it's about the values. And they're also valuing that flexibility. And so what we've done to address some of those issues or those challenges is really pay attention and listen to our employees, our reacHIREs, right? And making sure that they feel cared for, invested in, making sure they're supported, and creating that sense of belonging. And really how we're doing that is executing on our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategy across the organization. And how we're doing that is because we're a global organization, inclusion looks different in different places. And so it's really an ongoing conversation with reacHIREs, understanding what their needs are. We made the bold move of going to be a work from home company, which adds its challenges and its benefits, right? Women in particular are now able to, practice almost what feels like radical flexibility to really be able to care for their families, do what they need to do in their personal lives, and get their work done in an environment where it's safe to say, hey, I have to attend my child's game, or take my child to a medical appointment. So really, in this changing paradigm, there are these challenges around belonging, and we're in an ongoing conversation, listening to what those needs are and addressing them.
Well, I feel like you've hit a couple of really interesting things here. One is that inclusion looks different in different parts of the company, that you can't look at an organization all the same. And so I love this idea of almost, narrowing in on different populations, different groups, maybe different segments of your employee population, even different departments. Okay, or divisions, depending on how large you are. You might have many different divisions in your company, like Fidelity does. So that inclusion looks different in different parts of the organization. And I also love radical flexibility. That's really super interesting. So we'll come back to that. Deandra, I'm going to give you a chance to kick off the conversation. So coming at it from a bit of a different angle, we're living in one of the toughest job markets in history, toughest in terms of trying to attract talent to you, not toughest to find a job. There are not enough people to fill the openings that we have. So how are you thinking about that? How are you building your employee base as your company grows? Are you thinking differently? How are you tackling DEI? And what are strategies that you're employing to build diversity into your talent pool?
Yeah, Addie, thanks for the question. I think, this is a tough job market. We absolutely see it every day. And as you mentioned, it's not tough because there aren't enough jobs. It's tough because there are more jobs than people that we have to fill them. But internally at Fidelity, one of the things that we're doing to really tackle this and to really build a diverse pipeline of talent is to think differently about how we not only go after the talent, but how we look at the talent that we find when we do get into the job markets. We are also looking at internally developing programs and initiatives that really hone in on what's important to the associate base. One of the things that we are doing is designing programs, diversity programs that really target a very specific population holistically. And one of the things that I heard Shara say is like employing that flexibility. Fidelity is really working hard, especially we are not a fully remote or company, however, we're really focused on work-life balance and always have been, not just due to the pandemic, but we're really focused on that. But now we're more focused on really making that transition to a operating model or a working model that's conducive to associates feeling like they belong. Again, we've designed programs to tackle diversity and inclusion. We've made it a part of our culture. Diversity, we have figured out, a lot of people, when they think about diversity, they're thinking about race and ethnicity. We recognize that, diversity is a multitude of things, right? It can be, the fact that somebody went to college and somebody didn't. So anything that makes us different from the next person is, it's a diversity marker, right? So we have programs that are designed to tackle each one of those, kind of meet people where they are, I guess is the best way to put it. We have programs at the early career level. So like our college level programs, we have some mid to senior level programs. And, they're all an opportunity for us to, again, like I said at the beginning, to really just look at the populations differently and to really think differently how we bring them into the organization and how we maintain them once they join our company.
Great. I really like this idea of, rethinking how you've done things in the past. Fidelity is such a large and successful corporation worldwide, but, you've been doing things certain ways, but sort of rethink and how you show up and thinking about your populations differently. So, today's discussion is really focused on women. So let's talk a little bit more about that and drill down into women. Here we are, and here it is, 2022, and we're still talking about, women, and, do they need specific supports? And why do they need specific supports? And how, so now I'm going to turn back to Shara and say, how are you helping women specifically? That's what the topic is today. And, how do you see them as an important part of your population and part of your, DEI strategy? And then what are you doing to develop the pipeline so that you have the leaders more equally represented, next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, thinking longer term about how you're planning your leadership growth strategy?
Yes, great question. Thank you so much for asking. I love talking about this because at Rocket, we are being so intentional about our women. We are in the tech industry and we need more women. And so let me take you sort of from a broad perspective and move in. So when we talk about diversity, we are very intentional about what we mean, right? We're talking about women, we're talking about people of color, expanding veterans, people with disabilities, all of that. But when we're talking about women specifically, and really all of the areas of underrepresented groups, what we are doing internally is simultaneously preparing our organization to bring more women in, right? Making equity a choice, and making sure that women will want to come to Rocket because they know that they will be treated fairly, right? They know that, we are more than welcoming, embracing of different levels of diversity. And I talked about that inclusion piece before, because that laying that foundation really opens up an environment where we can be inclusive. And how we are being intentional about this is, one of the things that we are really proud of, Addie, is we partnering with reacHIRE with the Aurora program, which has really been phenomenal and gotten such great results. We have had 40% of the women going through the Aurora program, which is a leadership development program, 40% in the following cycle receive or earn promotions. Now that is a remarkable number. So we are being intentional about investing in our women. Being a part of that Aurora program not only provides that support around the one-on-one coaching, leadership development, but it really helps to create communities within Rocket, where women have support networks sort of across the globe and with other folks who they may not necessarily have had the opportunity to work with, right? So there's this whole support program that's built in. Women know that they can come in, and we're developing a mentorship program. So really being intentional. I talked about that, the radical flexibility. Women have told me, oh my goodness, if I were not working at Rocket, I don't know what I would have done around childcare or really being able to flex my hours to be able to suit the needs of my family and my work. So we are being very intentional about supporting women, looking at that broken rung. Pay equity is really important to us. We want to get that right. So providing all of those, that environment for women and for everyone, I think is really important in attracting and building and developing our women in an environment where they can thrive, and they understand that the environment is set up for their success.
I really like, Shari, your comment about building community and the importance of building communities. So I want to shift over to Deandra a minute to talk about how you're thinking about building community in a different way as you're thinking about how you're building alternative talent pools. Because to me, it's the overlay of the sense of belonging, and how do you create that community and connection and differentiate your brand really versus others, as well as your employee experience. So turning it to Deandra. John.
Yeah, thanks for that, Addie. And I have to say, Shar, I would wholeheartedly agree, with Addie, thinking about things like the flexibility, the belonging, the creating and building and fostering community, and mentorship is extremely important to women, yes, but I think to every employee that comes into a firm. And here at Fidelity, one of the things that we are, also doing in partnership with reacHIRE, and we've had a program, the Fidelity Resume program, that this year it's in its 10th year, proud to say, where we bring associates, and it's not just that program. That program is one of our integral programs, because it started off as a program that specifically targeted women, and it still is one of the largest programs that we have that bring in women in a cohort model. But we also have other programs that target women at various levels as well. But one of the things that we're doing is, through the Resume program, we're looking at that flexibility that you were talking about, right? It's women that have been out of the workforce, and now men. The past few years, we've welcomed men in an effort to be inclusive, but the program is probably still about 80% women on per cycle. We are bringing them in a cohort model, where they come in already with, that sense of family, and it's kind of, they're coming in with, a group of people that may have similar backgrounds, or at least may have similar experience, or they're coming in and they're having a similar experience even as they journey through Fidelity in this program. And one of the things that we do is really bring them in a way that is supported from both perspectives. So they are supported internally here at Fidelity, and they're also supported because it's a little bit of a journey, right, to come back to the workforce when you've taken, significant time away. So they have, from reacHIRE side, they have that return to work support. And the program enables them to balance both that returnship, but then also, come into an environment at Fidelity that's supported through mentorship, through career development, through training, and through support to help them actually jumpstart their careers. So we're really proud of that program and other initiatives that we have here internal at Fidelity. And we're absolutely, looking forward to continue to expand that and grow that program across more of our regions here.
Yeah, that's great. So this idea of building community and connection, let's talk a little bit about HR brand. I'm sure that there's some folks that are on the line here today. There's a lot of talk about, how do you attract the talent? How do you set yourselves apart? Why do programs like these make a difference? And do you think that they help your employer brand? And how does that dovetail into your values as a corporation? So I'll just open that up and see who wants to answer.
Yeah, sure. Deandra, I'll go.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so we have 1 million fewer women in the workforce than we did 2 years ago, right? And so what we found out when we saw women, when we saw everyone leaving, and I talked a little bit about this earlier, was they had a concern around advancement. They didn't feel like they had opportunities. And I think one of the things that adds to our value proposition is living the message, right? We're saying, come to Rocket and we will support you. You will have opportunities. And so rather than just giving that message, we have established our relationship with Aurora and done some other things like I mentioned earlier around the mentoring. We're supporting you as an individual. We're offering support and coaching, meditation. It's a whole suite of support. So what we are saying is, this is a phenomenal number, right, that I shared earlier, is that come here, you'll have opportunities. We put women through Aurora program, and 40% of them have been able to advance. We are paying attention to the broken rung. Where are the problems here? We are actually supporting women to be able to get to that first point, right? We know the statistics around, what does your career trajectory look like? We're actually paying attention. We know that right now that only 20% of the C-suite are white women, right? We know that only 7% are women of color, right? And that's Black women, Latina women, Native American, Asian women, that's all together. So we know that this is what's going on, and we are, come work with us. We are going to actually pay attention and work with you in that career development to help you meet your professional goals.
Deandra, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Shire, I think that's so powerful. That women can look at the things that you're doing and actually come through the door saying I feel empowered. I also think that what we are doing internally at Fidelity. One, just to answer the question really directly and say, does it, impact our brand? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. And we recognize that, and Fidelity actually recently released its second D&I report. And I think, making that public, that was really bold, a bold move for our company last year when we did it for the first time. And because what it really does is it holds us accountable, right? We put the information out there. And so that means everyone, that takes the time to read that report is looking and saying, okay, what is Fidelity doing to move the needle? Last year you were here, this year you're there. And so intentionally having programs such as Resume and our other diversity programs really help us in the market to be a company of choice for underrepresented populations. I think one of the other things that we've been doing is really just intentionally thinking about the needs of the talent. And I think that's what programs such as Resume and some of our other Belong inclusion programs really enable us to do, not only looking at internally, what does our business need? Yes, but what do our associates need as well? And how do we accommodate those needs and make an experience and make a working environment that's conducive to meeting those needs in a supported manner, but also fostering community and career development and also mobility, because that is important, especially, Shire, you mentioned underrepresented. If you look at the top of the house, you're going to see some women, but you're not going to see, the numbers that we would like. We definitely want to move the needle, in that respect. And I think one other thing that's extremely important that really sets us apart is our ability to not only create these programs and ensure that we are meeting the needs of our associates and that we're bringing in, but also our ability to pivot. To pivot internally, as we have a defined program, but when those associates come in, we have resources internally that give us an opportunity to say, hey, maybe, they need this. And then, we're able to pivot and change our trajectory based on what we're seeing in those cohorts, as they come. I think it's extremely important that when associates come in, when they feel they belong, when they feel that we are wholeheartedly trying to help them develop and grow their careers, that's where that retention comes in, because they feel valued. And ultimately, that's the goal, and that's where our brand recognition becomes stellar, because those people are going to say, I came in, through a program at Fidelity, and they did everything. They did everything I could think of for them to do to ensure that I felt welcome. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I was a part of a community, and I had the ability to grow and develop in my career.
I want to pick up on something, Deandra, that you said, which is this interesting notion of, talent is hard to find. You're going after different talent pools. Clearly, you're bringing returners in through your Resume program. I would like to say, if we're going to talk about statistics, Fidelity has had a commitment to this since 2013. So they were very forward thinking about bringing alternative talent in that didn't fit the job, that didn't necessarily immediately fit the job description, that needed time and support, encouragement, and community in order to grow into those roles. Since 2013, well before the pandemic, well before the rest of the world really recognized that maybe people that were sitting on the sidelines who had some experience could be valuable. Crazy idea. But so let's talk about this, because, Deandra, Fidelity hires thousands and thousands of people. And we brought hundreds and hundreds of people back to Fidelity on the Resume program. But why is it important for Fidelity to do this when they might have 10,000 jobs to fill or more? So what is the impact on the messaging for all the employees that are there, not just the hundreds of jobs that you're creating for this alternative talent pool, but what is the impact on the rest of your employee population on the messaging and your brand?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Addie. I would say one of the things that the Resume program and all of our diversity programs bring to our organization is providing us a different way to look at talent, and also what diversity is to us. Resumers, along with our college hires, along with people that identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community, people that have seen or unseen disabilities, they all bring a different view, a different background. They bring fresh and different perspectives to the organization. And I think that's where we gain so much. We understand that, diversity brings diversity of thought, not just, ethnicity, background, educational status, and things like that. So to every business group, when we bring in associates, for example, through the Resume program that, may not have been in the workforce for 2 to 5 to 10 years, who knows, they have an experience somewhere in their repertoire that will definitely change the way that we can potentially do business. Or, they may say, they may come in and say, you guys are doing it like this, what about that? So they really bring us some diversity of thought, and it really teaches us to embrace the differences that every associate brings. I would also say another add to the business is just the education to our associates that are already here, right? Especially to those managers that manage and lead these individuals, or the mentors that mentor them, or our sponsors that, spend time with them and start to help them to work through their career path, here at Fidelity. It gives them a different perspective as well. And it allows, it teaches us, different, it teaches us how to manage, associates where they are, and I know I mentioned that earlier because, somebody that's been out of workforce 2 years might not need, the level of support that somebody that's been out the workforce 10 years, or somebody that has a disability might need a different level of support than somebody who doesn't. So it really gives our managers and our leaders an opportunity to expand their way of working and their way of engaging with associates. And I would say the last thing that I think that these populations do internally is they really just bring a different amount of appreciation to the organization. Because one of the things that I found, especially with associates that come in through the Resume program, because having a gap on your resume, it can sometimes really be a deterrent when you're trying to step back into the market. And this program, and the women and men that come through the program, they are so appreciative of the opportunity. It's truly changing lives. And I think that's one of the things that we as leaders internal to Fidelity, managers, or other associates, we have the ability to impact the lives of the associates that we're bringing in through these programs.
Thank you so much, Deandra. I want to turn the conversation a little bit back now to where we started, and also want to make sure we have a few minutes for questions. So I'm going to now talk about sense of belonging, and really kind of, ask, how you each are thinking about it as it relates to your organizations. One thing that comes to mind, Shara, for you is, corporations are worldwide. So how do we're now, many of us have been remote or somewhat remote or hybrid for some time. One of our partners mentioned to us last week that they realized that, over 50% of their population joined the company after the pandemic started. So nobody actually came in the office. So how do you build a culture when, something like that happens? And then, Shara, I'm thinking more specifically about international and how you connect the dots for people that are not only, not working in the same department, but they're not even working in the same time zone. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that and the beauty and the importance of thinking about ways to make those connections.
Yeah, so definitely more challenging in a global remote environment to create that sense of belonging. And some of the things that we've been doing, trial and error, just trying to figure out what that looks like. And again, going back to inclusion and belonging, right? That looks different for different people. I think one of the really strong foundational things that we need to do and create on our teams to promote and to create this environment of belonging is this concept, this practice of psychological safety, for people to be able to show up as themselves, take risks, make mistakes, right? And have an expectation around what that looks like. Like when I fail, what does that look like? Does it mean that I'm going to be shamed or ridiculed? And I think that's a very basic thing that we can do on our teams, is like to create these frameworks around psychological safety, so that there is even a space for people to be able to show up and feel a sense of belonging. Some of the practical things that we've done in this remote space, and again, across Rocket, but also being very geo-specific. right? If we can get together from time to time, and we do have some offices that are open around the world for people to gather, or do really fun things, not just business as usual all the time. I know that we're broken up into communities where we try to get geographies that are close by to, you sort of have membership in this community, and you have a lead who helps to provide fun activities. I know there's been, cooking, and they get together for, various social activities. So I think those are some of the practical things we've been doing to really create that. In online, it's really about one-to-one connections, celebrating. I mean, the very, like, fundamentally, we're celebrating different parts of people and who they are, where we may not have necessarily been intentional about that in the past. It's not just US centric and the holidays that are meaningful to us, right? We're recognizing that there is diversity and such beauty in that, and encouraging people to share, and people are asking conversations and are engaging in our differences, right? Which has really opened up a space for people to say, hey, yes, I am actually seen in this space at work. So those are some of the things that we're doing foundationally. And, I want to mention that our core values are empathy, humanity, trust, and love. And yes, we are a technology company, and we actually live by these values, right? And I think it's really great foundation for our diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging efforts. And we really, when we do business, we really are thinking about that when we're talking about our customers, our partners, when we're talking about our rocketeers. We really do reference our core values, which I think really emit sort of into our culture.
That's great. That's great. Deandra, I see you are chomping at the bit to mention something else. So jump in here.
Yeah, no, I absolutely echo like the importance and the sentiment that Shara shared. One of the things that I was thinking about, I think it's so important that people feel empowered, as you said, Shara, to bring their whole selves to work, and I know I feel like it's starting to become one of those cliche terms, but I think it's really, really important, and actually leaning into that from a cultural perspective, it's super important, and it's super impactful to our employee base. One of the things that I know that we are doing strategically through our programs, and it's interesting because the programs that I specifically manage are diversity programs. Resume falls under those, but the programs are called the Belong Suite of Inclusion programs. And these programs are very intentional through the populations that they target, but they're intentional in the model, in the way that we execute them. One of the things that's really impactful and internal here at Fidelity are our affinity groups, because our affinity groups are really they're really the driving force behind the culture here at Fidelity, and really helping people to embrace who they are, where they've come from, their backgrounds, their experiences, and also like their cultural, I'm trying to say, like their routines and things like that, so our programs, all of the Belong programs specifically partner with our affinity groups, our Aspire, affinity group, for Black and Latinx, and then our Pride, and then our veterans, and we have our people that have disabilities, so there's a support system already built internally. And I really feel like when associates come in and we create this community for them through the programs, but then you also have that extended community through our affinity groups, where they feel like, what, I can show up, I can be successful, and you have people that have maybe lived and maybe are living, lives that have similar experiences as theirs. That's extremely important to them. And I also think that giving them opportunity to intentionally connect outside of their day-to-day job, right? Because we know we're going to come to work, we're going to do the work, everything is going to get accomplished. But having that opportunity to just stop, and you mentioned, like, doing things that are fun, and it's challenging in a virtual environment, but we have, tried to do things, and from not only from the programmatic level, but even from senior leadership, where we will have, in the entire organization to say, all right, we're having a meeting, but this meeting is really, a time for us to celebrate one another, or really just spend some time getting to know one another and embracing, who we are, as a firm and as a community of associates internal at Fidelity.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Shari, you're looking like you want to add something here.
Yeah, I just want to add, because this is so powerful, right? Yeah. Deandra, thank you so much, because you're just sparking all of the wonderful things that are going on. And, talking about our women in particular, and our women who are in the Aurora program, and I talked about the success of that for our women at Rocket. It's also that those communities, I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, building those communities. And what they are able to do is they are paired across the globe, right, with folks that, they may or may not have been connected with before. So there are these women, right, across the globe who are in a community, understanding, the cultures and mores of other folks, and really being able to share that, and really being able to show up and be seen by each other in different ways. So that's also a piece of the community building and the belonging and the powerful stories that women come away from. And that continues on, right? It's not just for the duration of the Aurora program. They stay connected, and they're going on in their career and building each other up, and sharing stories, and being really, peer mentoring is happening. So that's another powerful piece of belonging and community building.
Yeah, I think it's all about connection and finding commonality. And one of the beautiful things is, this notion of thinking about employees and talent as, how are you building communities, and how are those communities showing up, and how are they connected to each other, so that they continue to, thrive in your organization. Deandra, you're looking like you want to say something, so I'm going to share it to you if you have anything more.
No, I was just listening, and I just have to agree with Shara. The ability to connect women, across the globe. And I think, just when I think about our programs, we, for all of our programs, part of them is mentorship. And you're not necessarily paired with somebody that's in your business unit, or you're not paired with somebody that's maybe in the same region with you. So I have to agree with you, Shara, that, there's that perspective of, not only are you getting this experience, but you also have an opportunity to experience cultures from other parts of the organization, right? So when you think about, you may be sitting in Japan, but you're also in another part of the business that actually functions a little bit different. So that just adds to the breadth of the experience that these women have, or associates have, when they are coming into programs. And I would say into either program. So if it Fidelity Resume program or any others, and also I would think the Aurora program as well.
Okay, well, I feel like that this has been a great conversation. I so appreciate your thoughts, your leadership, and just your real focus on how do we make change. Because at the end of the day, this is a conversation has been happening for a long time. And until corporations take action and are intentional and purposeful in how they show up, we're not going to see that change. And I have to say that Rocket and Fidelity have, in their own ways, tried to tackle issues related to their female populations as how they are showing up, women who are people are identifying as female. So I just love this idea of purpose and intent. I do want to open it up for questions, and I do see we have a couple of questions in here. First of all, absolutely, I will share the studies through NC Tech that I spoke about. There were a couple of questions there. Somebody asked the question, what can you do to get more minority women in the pipeline specifically? So I think I'm going to turn that over to you, Deandra, first, because I think you can intentionally, purposefully answer that question.
Absolutely. So one of the ways that we are focused on and are getting more minority women into the pipeline is through intentional partnerships, external partnerships with companies such as reacHIRE, where we not only are building programs internally to target these populations, but we're building external relationships through diversity partnerships in order to help us be more intentional about the population that we are going after. I will also say one of the other things is that we are actively thinking about, when I talk about being intentional, is understanding that it's okay. It's okay for us to go out and say, all right, we want to increase the number of women at various levels of our firm by X%, because I think, sometimes people look at it like, you're being exclusive, you're trying to be inclusive. But I think, one of the things we're really doing is trying to create, that equity in the population of our firm. So programs such as Resume and other programs that we have in partnerships with many diversity partners really help us to intentionally tap into that pipeline and really hit those defined targets internally.
Yeah, and I think that when we looked at our data on the programming on the Resume program for Fidelity, wasn't the data, north of 60% of the participants were people of color?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and that's one of the things, where we talk about, yes, we're looking at women specifically for the program, but we're also recognizing that diversity is a bunch of other things. And I think if we are not only bringing in women, but also women of color, we're moving the needle, in multiple areas internal to the firm. Yeah.
And really, truthfully, that's replenishing the pipeline with diverse talent. And if that diverse talent feels that there's a sense of belonging, they're going to stay, which means that over time, they will grow into the leaders and change what the talent pipeline looks like. So really what you're doing is, very intentional, purposeful workforce planning that incorporates DEI in a very strategic way. And again, hats off to Fidelity for thinking about this from 2013. And truthfully, when we started in 2013, it was a man who brought us in. So that's even cooler. Okay. Shar, did you want to say something on that topic?
Deandra, you've hit the points, right? It's about being intentional, understanding what you're looking for, tapping into partnerships, doing things differently, really insisting that your candidate pools are more diverse than they have been in the past, so that there is an opportunity, right, to interview, assess new candidates, right? Because if you don't have that opportunity, you're not going to be able to grow. And absolutely, it's okay to say, listen, we want to grow in this area, and look at your multiple dimensions of diversity. And so here's the thing too, right? It's not just an exercise of making your organization more diverse. Right? From my perspective, it's the right thing to do. Predominantly, our corporations are, predominantly white males who are in leadership positions, right? White, cisgendered, heterosexual men, right? And so let's open the pipeline for other folks to have access to those opportunities. And what we also know is that when we have more women in, right, we're going to outperform those companies that don't in senior leadership, right? The number's like 15%. When we have ethnic and racial diversity in those senior leadership positions, we're going to outpace something, I think it's 35 or 40%. Those other companies financially outperform them, right? So it's the right thing to do. And while you're doing the right thing, guess what? You're gonna grow and keep performing. So
we have one more question that I want to tuck in and open to both of you. Here it says, community and inclusion programs are so amazingly beneficial. I wish all companies had them. When senior management is supportive and involved, it always makes it more impactful and more welcoming. That is so true. But when starting new programs, how do you attract and get busy higher ups supportive and involved, especially as quickly as things change and evolve? So how do you get that leadership support? And you guys are in the trenches. So how do you get senior leaders to care, to take risks, to try things and be innovative and think differently?
I think that's a great question. And I'll jump in and just say that our leadership is a proponent of diversity and inclusion. Our diversity inclusion efforts come from the top down. So it's not something that we're internally just checking the box. We are trying to change the culture in Fidelity to where D&I, it lives and breathes in what we do and how we work every day, and every associate feels that. So when you have a culture that has shifted and everyone is fostering that community, that sense of belonging from the top down, then getting support from our leadership, it's not a heavy lift at all. Every program that we have, every diversity program, specific diversity program that we have, has sponsorship at our executive level from our diversity and inclusion office. So at the L2 level, internal development, which means direct reports to our CEO. So we do have representation and support at that level, which flows through.
Shar, do you have just a minute? We're just like,
yeah, I have just a minute, and that's awesome that you have that support, and we have that support right from our CEO at Rocket. But I know that is not the case for many organizations. And what I would say is, if you want to contact me, we can talk through it, but in how much access you have to the executive leadership and how you might want to go through that. But really, you need to get the CEO on board, number one, and then you work through the rest of the leadership.
Well, I want to say thank you so much, Deandra and Shara, for this wonderful conversation. I'm going to turn it back to Andrea. Please, support NC Tech. And thank you so much. I'm going to hand it to Andrea.
No, thank all three of you. Everything shared, I know everyone on the call probably took at least a handful of tidbits that they can use. And we will follow up with more information from reacHIRE about the programs they talked about. Contact information, I believe there was a request for some of the studies that you mentioned early on, Addie, so we'll include that, as well as a link to the recording. I know some of these things you like to be fully engaged, but then go back and listen and take notes later. So we'll include that recording with our follow-up to all of the attendees. So we thank you all very much. Thank you for attending today's webinar, and we look forward to talking with you and working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.